River, I need to talk to you. I've been feeling lost lately. Like, I don't even know what I want from life anymore. Does that ever go away?
It doesn't just go away on its own, Maya, but the fact that you're asking the question at all, that's actually the beginning of something important.
The beginning of what exactly?
The beginning of understanding what you actually want. There's this idea I've been sitting with for a long time, a principle, really, that completely changed how I see everything. It's called the law of attraction.
Oh, I've heard of that. Isn't it just think positive and good things happen? That sounds a little too simple to be useful.
Most people reduce it to that, yes. And honestly, when I first came across it, I was skeptical too. But the real depth of it goes so much further than a bumper sticker. Let me ask you something first. When you imagine your ideal life, not what you think is realistic, not what other people expect from you, but truly ideal, what does it look like?
Honestly, I want to not worry about money. I want to buy things without calculating whether I can afford them. I want a place of my own, someone who actually understands me, maybe a kid someday. But I also genuinely don't know if those are my real wants or just things I think I'm supposed to want.
That uncertainty you just described, that's actually one of the most important things to work through, because the law of attraction is constantly operating whether you understand it or not. It doesn't pause while you figure yourself out.
What do you mean it's constantly operating?
Think of it like gravity. Gravity doesn't care if you believe in it. If you step off a ledge, you fall. The law of attraction works the same way. It responds to your thoughts, to what you focus on, and it brings more of that into your life, always, without exception.
Okay, but that can't literally be true. I don't spend my days thinking, I want to be broke and confused, and yet here we are.
Fair point. But here's the subtle part. The law doesn't only respond to what you consciously want, it responds to what you focus on, period. So if you spend a lot of mental energy worrying about not having enough money, thinking about how you can't afford things, feeling anxious about your future, you are, in effect, focusing intensely on scarcity, and scarcity keeps showing up.
That feels a little unfair, like I'm being punished for being anxious.
It's not punishment. It's just a mechanism, a completely neutral one. The law is entirely fair. It doesn't care who you are, what your background is, how old you are. It responds identically to everyone's thoughts. That's actually one of its core characteristics. It's fairness and objectivity.
So, what are the other characteristics?
There are 5 altogether. Fairness and objectivity, which we just talked about. Then consistency and absoluteness, meaning your thoughts and your life experiences are in absolute correspondence. Think good things, attract good things. Think fearful things, attract fearful things.
Consistency, I understand. What's the fifth one?
Precision. Whatever your mind has produced a strong focus around will arrive in your life with precision. Like a GPS, you punch in coordinates and it takes you exactly there. Your thoughts are the coordinates.
You keep using almost the word vibration. What does that mean in this context?
Think of thoughts as having a frequency, like a radio signal. Every thought you generate sends out a kind of signal, and the law of attraction matches that signal with experiences, people, and circumstances that resonate at the same frequency. So if your dominant signal is anxiety, you attract anxious circumstances. If your dominant signal is clarity and confidence, you attract circumstances that reflect that.
And this is supposedly how history's greatest minds operated? That seems like a bold claim.
Consider it for a moment. Plato spent his life arguing that ideas are more real than physical things. Newton and Einstein both talked openly about how their greatest discoveries came not from grinding calculation, but from imaginative leaps, from deeply held convictions about what must be true before they had any proof. Lincoln held on to a vision of a united country at the absolute lowest points of the Civil War, when nothing in the physical world supported that vision. Edison failed thousands of times and simply refused to let failure become his dominant thought.
Okay, I'll grant you that there's something to the idea that belief shapes outcomes, but let's get practical. How does someone actually use this? What are the mechanics?
Let's start with the two necessary conditions. For anything to enter your life, two things have to happen. First, the desire must form. You have to actually have the thought, the want, the intention. Second, you have to have an expectation that it can become real. You have to be open to receiving it.
So, desire and acceptance.
Exactly, and both matter equally. Every great entrepreneur started with a vision that nobody else believed in. What made the difference wasn't resources or connections or luck. It was that the person themselves held the desire and believed it was possible. Those two conditions in full force.
But then, why do bad things happen to people who aren't trying to attract them? Nobody wants to get sick, for example.
Right, and this is where people get frustrated with the concept at first. But think about how much mental energy a health-anxious person devotes to illness. They read every symptom article, they catastrophize every headache, they imagine worst-case scenarios. Their dominant focus, even though it comes from fear, is still intensely focused on disease, and that focus becomes an invitation.
So, worrying about getting sick can actually contribute to getting sick?
Not instantly, and that's actually important. There's a buffer between thought and outcome. Your thoughts don't materialize the moment you have them, which means you always have time to adjust. The key insight is, instead of thinking, "I don't want to be sick," shift to, "I am becoming healthier every day." It sounds like a small change, but the direction of your focus is completely different.
One is focused on disease even with a don't attached to it.
Precisely. The law of attraction doesn't process negation the way your rational mind does. If I say, "Don't think about a red apple," what happens?
I immediately think about a red apple.
Right. So the solution isn't to push against what you don't want, it's to turn fully toward what you do want.
That's actually a significant mental shift. Okay, so I need to figure out what I actually want. But I told you, I'm not even sure. I feel like a lot of what I think I want might just be noise.
Then that's your first real work, and there's a method that genuinely helps. Start observing the world around you as a collector, not passively, actively. When you encounter something that makes you feel genuinely good, take note, not because you want that exact thing, but because it tells you something about what resonates with you.
Like window shopping for life.
Beautifully put. You might see someone with a warm, easy laugh and think, "I want more of that ease in my life." You might walk through a neighborhood and feel something open up in your chest. You might notice someone's relationship and think, "That's the kind of connection I want." None of these are things you need to copy wholesale. You're just collecting signals about your own desires.
And then what do you do with all those signals?
You combine them. You build a picture, a composite image of the life that reflects your authentic wants. Someone might be very wealthy but completely isolated. You note the wealth as something you want and consciously leave the isolation out. Someone might have incredible creative freedom but struggle financially. Take the creative freedom, add financial stability. You're the editor. You're constructing your own vision.
I like that framing. It makes wanting things feel less like coveting and more like authorship.
Exactly. And once you have that picture forming, even loosely, you have something to orient toward. And orientation is everything.
Let's talk about the bigger questions, because you mentioned success, money, happiness. Those feel like the three things everyone is chasing, but nobody knows how to define.
Let's start with success, since it's the most misunderstood. What do you think success means?
My gut answer is other people approving of you. Career achievement, money, the right lifestyle. But I suspect that's wrong.
It's not entirely wrong. Social recognition is genuinely part of how we're wired as social beings. But the problem comes when the only measure of success becomes wealth accumulation. Those internet lists about what car you should own at 30, what your savings should look like at 40, that's a hollow definition.
Because it's someone else's coordinates programmed into your GPS.
Exactly. The more useful definition is completing any desired outcome can be considered success. Finishing a dish that tastes the way you hoped, success. Planning a wedding where everyone feels genuinely joyful, success. And the deepest measure of success is whether it produces genuine happiness, not performed happiness, actual felt happiness.
So the standard is different for everyone.
By necessity. And importantly, neither success nor failure is permanent. Every failure is simply information, a signal that something needs adjustment, not a verdict on your worth. If a computer crashes, it could be user error or hardware failure. Either way, you learn and adjust. You don't conclude that computers are impossible.
People treat failure so catastrophically, though, like it's a permanent stamp on their identity.
That's because they've confused the result with the person. But in the context of attraction, failure just means there's a mismatch somewhere between your thinking and your goal. Adjust the thinking, keep the goal, try again.
Okay, money. Let's talk about money because that's where it gets uncomfortable for me. Wanting money feels crass, like I should want something more meaningful.
That belief is actively working against you, and it's worth examining closely. Money itself is neutral. It's a mechanism of exchange. The discomfort around wanting it usually comes from attaching moral weight to it that it doesn't inherently carry.
So money isn't the root of all evil?
Money amplifies. If someone is generous and gets money, they become more generous. If someone is fearful and grasping and gets money, they become more fearful and grasping. The quality was always theirs. The money just gave it more room to express.
Okay, so how does attraction apply to money specifically?
The first and essential step is genuinely believing you're capable of having it, not performing that belief, actually believing it. If your foundational self-concept is, I'm someone who will always struggle financially, then even when opportunities arise, and they will, your actions will subtly undermine them. You'll self-sabotage without realizing it, because the result would contradict your self-image.
That's uncomfortable to hear. I think I might actually do that.
Most people do. Recognizing it is the first step out of it. Beyond that, the relationship with money needs to be healthy, not hoarding, not reckless, but genuine flow. Money has value in circulation. The person who accumulates obsessively out of fear is expressing anxiety, not security. And anxiety attracts more conditions that justify the anxiety.
It's circular.
Everything in this framework is circular, which is why the starting point matters so much. But let me also be honest about something. The law doesn't justify harmful means of acquiring money. Anyone who compromises their integrity or harms others for financial gain has lost the thread entirely. The goal is happiness, and no amount of money earned that way produces genuine happiness.
That brings us to happiness, which I think is the hardest one. The more directly I try to pursue it, the further it seems to get.
That's because happiness isn't a destination. You can't arrive at it and stay there through effort. It's more like a state you inhabit when your thoughts and your authentic self are aligned.
I'm not sure I follow that. Say more?
There's a story I find really resonant. Someone spent years moving from one religious institution to another, looking for answers, trying to fill something hollow inside. Each time he'd walk in with hope and walk out disappointed, partly because each tradition claimed exclusive access to truth and dismissed everything else. The inner need was real, the search was genuine, but the framework kept failing him.
What changed?
When he discovered that thoughts shape reality, he could finally accept philosophical contradictions without needing to resolve them. What looks like poison from one angle can be nourishing from another. He stopped needing everyone to agree with his framework, and that release was itself a form of happiness.
So happiness has something to do with letting go of the need to control?
Deeply, yes. You are not responsible for curating the world to your preferences, and the more energy you put into trying, judging other people's choices, resenting what others have or do, the less energy you have available for your own actual life. But there's a practical dimension to happiness that's equally important.
Which is?
Happiness is the cognitive state in which attraction works most powerfully. When you feel genuinely good, what happens to your thinking?
It gets clearer. more expansive, better ideas come.
And when you feel terrible?
Everything contracts. I second-guess everything. I can't see options.
So happiness isn't just a reward for achieving things, it's the fuel for achieving things. Any moment spent in sustained misery is genuinely wasted, not because suffering is illegitimate, but because your ability to attract what you want is severely diminished when your dominant state is unhappy.
That reframes things completely. Okay, let me push on thought more deeply, because you've been describing it as the engine of all this. How does it actually work?
Think of thought as magnetic. When you generate a thought and hold it consistently, you begin to pull towards you other thoughts of the same kind, then conversations, then experiences, then people. It expands outward from a seed.
So one thought held long enough becomes a whole life orientation.
That's exactly it. And this is why what you choose to think about matters profoundly. Most people treat their thoughts like weather, something that just happens to them. But thoughts are something you can actively choose. Not every single one of the roughly 60,000 thoughts a day most of us generate, but the ones you feed attention and energy to.
60,000? That's staggering.
It is, which is why trying to monitor each individual thought is futile. You'd exhaust yourself before breakfast. But there's a much more efficient system available to you.
Which is?
Your emotions. They're your real-time guidance system. When you're thinking thoughts that align with what you authentically want and who you authentically are, you feel good. When you're thinking thoughts that contradict your authentic self, you feel bad. Every time.
So instead of policing every thought, I just notice how I feel and treat that as information?
Yes, a negative emotion isn't a punishment or a character flaw. It's a signal. It's saying the direction of your current thinking is not aligned with what you actually want. And when you get that signal, you have a choice. You can continue in that direction or you can redirect.
And redirecting means what? Forcing yourself to think happy thoughts?
Not forcing, genuinely shifting. And sometimes the most effective thing when you're caught in a downward spiral is not to try harder to think positively, it's to take a complete break from the topic. Sleep, watch something absorbing, listen to music, move your body. You're not suppressing the negative thought, you're diluting its energy by introducing something genuinely positive.
And then when you come back to the topic?
You often find you can approach it from a better angle. Even a small positive shift invites the law to begin matching you with better thoughts, better opportunities, better people. It compounds quickly.
I want to push back on something, though, because I think there's a real trap here. The idea that your thoughts create everything could be used to blame people for their own suffering. Someone who's sick, someone who's poor because of systemic inequality. Are you saying it's just their thoughts?
That's a really important challenge, and I want to take it seriously rather than deflect it. The law operates at the level of individual experience. It's not a social policy framework, and it's not a tool for dismissing structural inequity. What it offers is this. Within whatever circumstances a person finds themselves, their relationship to their own thinking still matters. Viktor Frankl survived some of the worst conditions imaginable and documented how the internal life of prisoners, their ability to maintain meaning, to choose their response to suffering, affected who survived and who didn't. Not magic, but consciousness has real effects. The law doesn't say suffering is deserved. It says that within suffering, what you do with your mind remains at least partially yours.
That's a much more nuanced position than you attracted your cancer.
The shallow version of this teaching does real harm. The deeper version offers genuine agency without being cruel about circumstance. The goal is always to help people recognize what they do have some influence over, their thinking, without dismissing what they don't control.
Okay, thought versus action. Because in my world, action was everything. Just work harder, just do more. Thought without action is just daydreaming.
Action is important. Nobody's saying otherwise. But here's what most people miss. Action without aligned thought is just noise. It produces results, yes, but not necessarily the results you actually want.
I'm not convinced. Give me an example.
Okay, imagine someone who's lonely and anxious about being alone. Instead of doing the inner work, figuring out what they actually want in a partner, working through the anxiety, clarifying their values, they just start dating frantically, acting, moving, doing. What tends to happen?
They attract people who reflect the anxiety rather than the clarity, probably.
Exactly, because the dominant signal they're putting out is loneliness and desperation, not readiness and genuine openness. The action is real, but it's guided by fear, and fear-guided action tends to recreate the very conditions it's trying to escape.
I've seen that pattern. I've lived that pattern.
Most of us have, and there's a deeper version of the same trap. Someone who just ended a painful relationship, who is genuinely hurt, who hasn't processed any of it, and then dives immediately into someone new because being alone feels unbearable. No reflection, no adjustment, just action. And the new situation tends to echo the old one because the thinking hasn't changed.
So the sequence matters enormously.
Thought first. Let the thought settle into genuine desire and genuine belief, then act. And when you act from clarity and alignment, the action itself becomes different in quality. There's a well-known example of an actor who spent decades genuinely at peace with being single. He wasn't frantically searching, he was simply clear about what he wanted. Then, in his 50s, he met someone who matched his authentic vision completely, and he acted immediately and decisively. The action worked because the thought was already aligned.
So patience in the thought phase isn't laziness, it's preparation.
It's the most important preparation. The action is just the final step.
All right, you talked about similar frequencies attracting each other, but we've always heard opposites attract. Which is it?
Neither exactly. It's not that similar things attract, and it's not that opposites attract. It's that things vibrating at the same frequency attract each other.
What's the difference?
Take two people in the same profession, technically similar, even competitors. But if they're both driven by the same underlying values, the same intellectual curiosity, the same commitment to craft, they'll find each other magnetic. Not because they do identical work, but because the signal they put out is harmonious. And in relationships, what looks like opposites attracting is usually someone being drawn to a quality they're moving toward in themselves.
Say more about that.
A reserved person drawn to someone expansive and vivid isn't just attracted to pure opposites. They're attracted to something that resonates with their own aspiration. They want to become more open. That quality in the other person mirrors a genuine inner desire.
So the other person is almost like a living symbol of where you want to go.
Beautifully put. And this also explains why what you're attracted to changes as you change. As you develop the qualities you admired, those qualities become less magnetic. They're familiar now, not aspirational. You then become drawn to the next edge of your own growth.
That reframes attraction completely. Okay, I want to get practical about building a life using this, day to day.
Let's start with something counterintuitive. You are the center of everything that happens to you. Not in a solipsistic way. The world is real, other people are real. But in terms of your experience, you are the only consistent variable. Everything that has arrived in your life arrived because of a meeting between the world and your particular thought patterns, beliefs, and emotional dispositions.
That's a lot of responsibility to take on.
It is, and some people resist it because it's easier to believe that things just happen to you. But accepting authorship of your life, even partially, is the most liberating thing you can do. Because if you created the conditions, you can create different ones.
And the starting point is recognizing your own value.
Yes, this is foundational, and people underestimate it. If you fundamentally believe you're worthless, not as a performance of humility, but as a core operating belief, then you cannot effectively attract what you deserve. An opportunity will arrive, and something in you will say, "That's not for me," and you'll let it pass.
I definitely recognize that pattern. Something good appears and I immediately find the reason it won't work out.
That's the belief at work. Here's a practical exercise. Take a notebook, write "my strength" at the top of a page, and then genuinely write down everything about yourself that you respect, that you like, that you'd want a friend to have. Not just skills, character, the way you listen, your curiosity, your persistence, your humor, all of it.
That feels embarrassing, honestly.
Which tells you how urgently you need to do it. The embarrassment is a belief that self-appreciation is arrogance. It isn't. It's alignment with reality. You exist, therefore you have value. That's the baseline. It's not something you earn, it's something you have.
You exist, therefore you have value. I want to sit with that.
There's an example I think about often. An assistant who was a disaster at detail work, forgetful, messy in her processes, but she could walk into a room of complete strangers and within 10 minutes know everyone's name and story. When someone recognized that gift and moved her into a role that needed it, relationship building, outreach, she flourished completely. The quality that looked like a flaw in one context was exactly the gift needed in another.
Everyone has something like that.
Without exception. The challenge is that we're often judged and judge ourselves in contexts that don't showcase our particular gifts, and we conclude we have none, but we're just in the wrong frame.
How does someone find the right frame?
Pay attention to what comes easily to you that seems hard for others. Pay attention to what people thank you for repeatedly without prompting. Pay attention to what problems you naturally gravitate towards solving, even when nobody asked you to. Those are the fingerprints of your gift.
And once you find it, focus there rather than trying to be competent at everything?
Focus there deeply. There's a risk I see often. Someone who acquires many skills across many fields but masters none of them. They're endlessly learning, but the learning stays at the surface. They're spending their one finite life pursuing infinite knowledge, which is a race you cannot win. Better to go to the bottom of one well than to stand at the edges of 1,000.
That describes a phase I went through. Learning everything, mastering nothing, wondering why nothing felt meaningful.
Scattered thinking attracts scattered results. That's not a judgment, it's mechanical. When your attention is diffused across too many desires at once, no single one gets enough focused energy to build real momentum. And here's what people don't realize about that scattered state. It generates anxiety, not because life is wrong, but because the mind is processing too many competing signals at once.
So the anxiety itself is a symptom of unfocused attraction.
Often, yes. The mind experiences it as being overwhelmed. The underlying cause is that you're trying to attract and maintain too many things simultaneously, and none of them have enough energy behind them to feel like progress.
Okay, let's talk about time, because impatience is a real problem for me. I want things now. When they don't arrive, I start doubting the whole framework.
The impatience is understandable, but it works against you in a specific way. When you're in a state of impatient waiting, checking, calculating, anxious, your dominant emotional state is lack. You're focused on the absence of the thing, not the thing itself, and focus on absence attracts more absence.
So even the waiting needs to be transformed.
The waiting needs to become trusting, not passive or naive, active trusting. You continue to hold the vision, to feel as though it's on its way, to act as though you're already prepared to receive it, and then you release the timeline.
That's hard. Releasing the timeline feels like giving up.
Giving up is abandoning the desire. Releasing the timeline is maintaining the desire while releasing the anxiety around when it arrives. One of those collapses the signal. The other actually strengthens it.
Can you say more about acting as if it's already on its way?
Yes, this is one of the most practical tools in the whole framework. If you want to be seen as capable and confident in your professional life, carry yourself as though you already are. Not fakery, embodiment. If you want to attract a loving relationship, cultivate genuine warmth and openness now in all your current interactions. You're not pretending to have something you don't. You're inhabiting the state that makes you a match for it.
Like someone who loves a musician so deeply that she spends years covering his work, absorbs everything about it, and ends up becoming a performer herself.
Exactly that. She wasn't imitating, hoping to trick anyone. She was so genuinely drawn into the qualities she admired that she absorbed and extended them, and the law responded to that genuine vibration.
So, imitation rooted in authentic admiration is a form of real attraction.
When it comes from genuine resonance, yes. And the neurological science actually supports this. Repeatedly thinking, speaking, and acting in a particular way physically reshapes the brain, what researchers call neuroplasticity. You're not just changing your circumstances, you're rebuilding the architecture of your own thinking. The more you embody the person you want to become, the more your brain literally rewires itself to support that identity.
Okay, you mentioned breaking life into stages. I want to understand that because my relationship with time management is chaotic at best.
Here's the challenge. If you want everything at once, you create internal chaos. The mind can't focus powerfully on 20 simultaneous desires. You get a diffuse signal, a diffuse response.
And then you feel like nothing is working, which makes you anxious, which makes things worse.
Exactly, the spiral. The solution is to divide life into stages, not rigid compartments, but living, breathing phases that you move through with intention. Each stage gets a goal. Each stage gets your focused attention.
What does a stage actually look like? Are we talking years?
It can be a year, it can be a week, it can be a single morning. The size matters less than the intentionality. When you wake up, you're entering a stage. Before your feet hit the floor, spend a moment asking, what do I want from this stage? Not a laundry list, one clear intention, and then move through that stage oriented toward it.
Even tiny stages, like the drive to work?
Especially those. When you get in your car, you're entering a stage. What do you want from it? Maybe to arrive calm and mentally ready? Maybe to enjoy a piece of music you love? Whatever it is, you set the intention consciously rather than drifting through it.
Most of my life has been drifting, honestly.
Most people's has. And drifting doesn't necessarily mean terrible things happen, but it means you're much more susceptible to absorbing whatever is ambient in your environment. Other people's moods, the anxious news cycle, the colleague who complains relentlessly. Without intentional stages, those external frequencies become your frequency by default.
So the stage setting is like a regular course correction.
Exactly. Each new stage is a reset point, a moment to ask, what do I actually want right now? And because the law operates in the present, all attraction happens now, even when you're imagining the future. Each present moment reset is genuinely consequential.
The emphasis on the present is interesting to me. I spend so much mental energy on regret about the past and worry about the future.
Both are imagined in the present. The past exists right now as memory. The future exists right now as anticipation. In whichever one you run most vividly and most emotionally right now is what you're actively inviting into your present experience.
And the past, you can't change it, so there's genuinely no point in feeding it with present attention.
The event happened. It cannot unhappen. What you can choose is whether to keep it as a live story running in your present moment or to acknowledge it, extract what it taught you, and let it settle into the past where it belongs. Every moment you spend mentally living in painful past events is a moment of present attraction genuinely wasted.
That's hard work, though. That's not just a decision you make once.
No, it's a practice. You'll catch yourself mid-spiral 20 times a day. Each time you have the same choice. Over time, the spirals get shorter and the redirects come faster, but there's no shortcut to it.
What about the future? You said the imagination of the present assembles the future.
What you imagine consistently and emotionally tends to become real, not through magic, through the accumulated effect of thought on behavior, on which opportunities you notice, on the people you attract, on the thousands of small choices you make every day that are all pointing in the same direction.
So the question isn't really how do I change my life? It's what am I focusing on right now in this moment?
That's the most concise version of the whole framework. Your life right now is the accumulated output of your previous thinking. Your life tomorrow is being assembled by your thinking today. The most powerful intervention is always, what am I choosing to focus on right now?
I want to talk about acceptance. You mentioned it was one of the most important pieces, but we haven't really unpacked it.
It's the final piece, and in some ways the hardest. Acceptance can look like resignation if you misunderstand it.
What's the difference?
Resignation is abandoning what you want. Acceptance is releasing the need to control how it arrives and releasing judgment of everything around you in the meantime. It has a few distinct dimensions. There's acceptance of others, allowing people to make their own choices, attract their own lives, follow their own paths, even when you disagree with those paths. There's acceptance of the past, recognizing that your previous experiences, even painful ones, brought you specific information, growth, and the very desires you now have. And there's acceptance of yourself, genuinely, not as a project for improvement, but as someone already whole.
The acceptance of others feels genuinely hard. There are people in my life whose choices I find really concerning.
Of course there are. And you can care deeply about people while still recognizing you are not the designated curator of their lives. Every unit of energy you spend judging, worrying about, or trying to change other people is energy not available for your own thinking, your own desires, your own growth. And there's a mechanical reason beyond the philosophical one. Sustained judgment of others is a thought pattern in you, and the law responds to it. What you project outward keeps returning to your experience.
So letting people be is actually partly in your own interest.
Mostly in your own interest, if you're being honest about it. You love the people you love. You can continue loving them while accepting that their path is theirs. And interestingly, when you stop projecting your preferences on the others, relationships often improve. People feel seen rather than assessed.
And accepting yourself, this loops back to the value we talked about earlier.
It deepens there. Real self-acceptance isn't narcissism or refusal to grow. It's recognizing that you are not broken. You are in process. Every human being is permanently in process, growing, changing, discovering. Accepting yourself means accepting the version of yourself that exists right now, at this stage, with all its current limitations and current gifts, as genuinely okay. From that place of okayness, growth becomes possible and even natural. From a place of self-rejection, growth becomes desperate striving that usually reinforces the very inadequacy it's trying to escape.
I think I've been in desperate striving mode for most of my adult life.
Most people have. The culture rewards it, at least superficially, but look at the results. Vast numbers of people who have achieved everything the cultural template promised and still feel hollow. Because achievement that comes from self-rejection doesn't fill the hole, it just changes its shape.
I'm going to be honest. When you first mentioned the law of attraction, I expected something that would feel like a fortune cookie. What it actually is feels more like a complete operating system for a conscious life.
That's a good description. And like any operating system, it only works well when you understand it. Use it blindly without understanding, and you end up getting results, but not necessarily the ones you want. Use it consciously and consistently, and it becomes the most powerful tool you have.
I still have some resistance. I think I always will. That's probably just how I'm wired. But the resistance feels different now, less like skepticism and more like caution.
Caution is healthy. You should test this against your own experience. Don't take my word for it. Start small. Notice the patterns. When you think about something with sustained focus and feeling, positive or negative, notice what shows up. Keep a record if you're the kind of person who benefits from that. Let it prove itself to you.
That feels like fair terms. Okay, where do I actually start? Practically, today.
3 things. First, today, not tomorrow, today, take 20 minutes and write down what you genuinely want in your life. Not what's realistic, not what other people expect, what you want. Be specific and honest with yourself.
Okay. What's the second?
Start noticing your emotions as information. Anytime you feel a strong negative emotion, pause and ask, what was I just thinking? You'll start to see the pattern quite quickly once you're looking for it.
And the third?
The third is gentler. At some point today, find something to genuinely appreciate, not performed gratitude, real, felt appreciation. For anything. A cup of tea at exactly the right temperature, a conversation that made you laugh, the fact that you're in the middle of this conversation right now. Let that appreciation actually land. Feel it. Notice what happens to your energy when you do.
Just those 3 things?
Just those 3. The law has been running your whole life without your conscious participation. Today, you start participating.
Something actually shifted in me during this conversation. Not just intellectually, something felt.
That felt shift is itself the beginning. That's your guidance system telling you the direction of your thinking just aligned with something real in you.
The guidance system working.
The guidance system working. And Maya, it was always working. You just weren't listening yet.
Thank you, River. Genuinely.
Thank yourself. You asked the question, you showed up for the answer, you stayed with the uncomfortable parts rather than dismissing them. That was entirely you.
I'll try to remember that.
Don't try. Write it down under my strengths.